Okay, so yeah, let's get started. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so finally you finished your session for this Symfony Live Conference. So yeah, that was really great job.
Thank you.
And yeah, so yeah, finally you can start just enjoy the conference.
Exactly. It's always so much build up to do your presentation, and then you can enjoy and participate in the rest.
So do you have any responsibility for this conference? Because this conference is first conference in United States.
So, Sensio Labs in France organize all of the conference, and I helped on site with some logistical planning. But no, it was really a Sensio Labs France operation. And I think they've done a really good job. Microsoft has graciously provided a space. We have 100, 150 people here today, and a whole set of good sessions. So while I haven't done much, being part of the Sensio team and being able to help coordinate stuff on site, I think I've helped with the hack days, etc.
Yeah. So yeah, in your session, you spoke about the history of Symfony.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you started involve the Symfony project from Symfony 1 or something or 0 point something.
Zeroed up.
So what's the big difference between since you started working on Symfony project and now?
Yeah, so in my talk I really talked about the path to Symfony in the United States and how I've really gone with Symfony in the past. So talking from the start in 2005 to what we're doing today, what has been the biggest change? I think it's more about how the community interacts with Symfony. Especially when it comes to Symfony 2, so much of GitHub has changed how we develop and how the project is managed. I think that the community is much more active, and because we have such a large adoption globally, we have a lot of Symfony specialist agencies, as well as a bunch of startups and big companies building large applications. And as they build large applications, they discover bugs in the documentation, they discover something that wasn't tested as good as it could have been, and they start to contribute that back. I would say over the past 5 or 6 years, that has been the biggest change I've seen. And it's nice to see. It means that the core team doesn't work as hard and that the community also gives back to each other and not just one person leading the path.
Yeah, when attending some Symfony meetup, I've seen many people around here, and also yeah, I've been seeing many jobs involved Symfony. So does it mean Symfony is pretty big in United States?
Yes. So I think Yahoo really led the adoption in terms of the brand, getting the brand of Symfony out there, saying that it actually works for the large scale. We have a Symfony meetup in San Francisco. It happens about once a month, sometimes every other month.
Oh, is it the monthly meetup?
It's a monthly San Francisco meetup, and it's dedicated to Symfony. And there's also a PHP meetup as well. But for the Symfony meetup, I think the last time there was 15 people, 10 or 15 people. And it's the same good group of people that we have Paul Thrasher from Dogster. We have a bunch of different local people that are working on Symfony. And it's good to get the group together. You can watch the community grow, because you have guys like Plancast, which is a small startup in San Francisco. They joined the meetup. You have companies that have been around for a long time and slowly migrated, like Dogster and Catstar, to Symfony, and they all go to the San Francisco meetup. So even outside of just the meetups, watching businesses adopt Symfony has been really good, because you have really small startups like Plancast and really large companies developing. I think that's probably been the best gauge of how the community in the US is doing, is by the number of applications that we see published, as well as by the number of job opportunities that are created. When I started with Symfony, nobody really knew what Symfony was. It wasn't really well adopted. So having the Symfony as a skill set on my resume wasn't really that valuable, because it was appreciated, and it turned out to be really valuable for me with Yahoo, because they hired me specifically because of that. But I think that is what is the best gauge. Over the past several years, you've seen that there are more and more jobs that say Symfony experience wanted, Symfony 2 experience wanted, Symfony 2 and Doctrine 2 wanted. And I think that shows the demand in the market. On behalf of Sensio Labs, we're doing business in the U.S. We do corporate trainings, we do online trainings, we hold this conference, we work with clients doing development, we do consulting and project auditing. So there's a ton of that work that we also gauge the community by. So I think the adoption in the US is actually quite large, and it's only going to get better and better, especially with the release of Symfony 2.
So I suppose you have seen many open source community in your experience.
Yeah.
So if compare the other community and the Symfony community, what's the obvious point or culture of Symfony community?
So I worked in a couple different developer communities. I've worked in several at Yahoo, from our application platform to YQL and YUI. And really watching this community works, it's about a business serving the needs of the business. In the case of Symfony and Symfony Labs, I think I've seen Symfony grow despite the goals of the business. The goals of the business have helped further it, but it runs itself. The community operates itself. I think the biggest thing that inspires people to contribute is the ability, that it's encouraged. That we say that if you don't like it, submit a patch and send a pull request and we'll fix it. It's open for change. I think opening the dialogue with the community that says we truly are open source. Not open source is just that we have a permissive license that allows you to use our source code, but that we actually accept contributions and that we work with the community. I think that's been the biggest thing. That's what inspired me. In 2006, Fabian really wasn't looking for many contributions. Actually, the end of 2005, right after he released it, he wanted to wait a little bit. And I was sort of frustrated with this because I was like, well, I don't like the source. I want to change it. I want to do this now. And it was difficult. It was hard to get subversion access. It was hard to get access to the track and create all these issues and submit this. I think now that's totally changed. I think GitHub on its own has made coding social, and that means that open source communities can leverage that. And I think that's the biggest change that inspires the community to contribute back. Because you lower the bar, you make it as easy as possible for somebody to say, I don't like this, how about doing it this way instead? Combined with the fact that Symfony's core team is much more structured now, it means that we meet up weekly to discuss the ongoing design. It means that we make decisions very quickly. I think this is sort of the evolution of a open source community, or not even open source, of a developer community. You have developers developing for each other, and you have the core team supporting and encouraging collaboration, but they're also not mandating what can be done. This is the case with bundles. Anybody can create a bundle, and they can submit a bundle on GitHub, and it'll automatically get added in symfony2bundles.org. I think this is a really good idea. It allows you to contribute your work and have it shown off, and allows you to collaborate with other developers much, much easier.
Yes, so now we have a great way to share the code, it is GitHub. So, and also the Symfony community has several ways to communicate. So which is the best way to communicate community, or how can we start to involve the community?
Absolutely. The best way to get started is to post to the email list, to talk on the IRC, join the IRC weekly meetup. It happens 8 a.m. on every Thursday. I believe that's 4 p.m. in Paris. That's the best way to get started. Hey, I want to change this. Is this open for discussion? Is this something that we want to keep stable the way it is? And if not, once you talk about it on IRC or you mention it on the email list, you can simply add the change on GitHub, send it to Fabian's repository for a pull request, and he'll add it in. And the change could be a new feature. It could be fixing the PHP doc. It could be fixing the documentation, adding new documentation. If you have a particular skill with a certain language, it would be translating the documentation. This is much of how the community evolves. So the best way to get started is to just jump in, and don't be afraid that you're going to break something. Don't be afraid that the community will react harshly if things don't go as well as you expect. The community is very forgiving, and I think that having GitHub and such an organized core team now means that anybody can contribute, and if it's not high quality enough, then we will tell you, like, you should add documentation or you should add tests for this feature before we'll submit it. And I think that's the best way. Just get started. And the best way to get started is join IRC channel, join the mailing list, and contribute on GitHub. That's absolutely.
Yes, so talking about the Symfony 2,
yes.
I think most of the people are very curious about Symfony 2 now.
Yes.
So do you have any favorite part or component or design in Symfony 2?
Yeah, so I'm actually a big fan of the PHPUnit integration and the debug tools. So I really like the web profiler. The web profiler, the biggest functionality that I like right now is that you can go through your application, make several requests, go into the web profiler interface, and go back to a particular request and see what has gone wrong, to see what has happened. You get the complete log, complete exceptions, and I think that is extremely convenient. We had the same idea in Symfony 1, but you can only see the current request.
Yeah.
So if I redirected, what do I see? I have to go and check the logs, right? All of these problems are now fixed. And I would say my second favorite feature that I've seen recently is the browser kit component and the crawler and the test client component. Essentially the idea that I can fetch the page with PHPUnit and look with CSS or regular expressions or XPath expression and find content. But as well, since we're using PHPUnit now, I can do continuous integration really easy with Jenkins, or I can do code coverage reports really easy. These are all tools that you could accomplish in Symfony 1, but it was much, much more difficult. There was a lot of hacking involved. In Symfony 2, it just works, and it works using the best-of-breed components. It's documented, and it's very simple. Yeah, so the debug toolbar and the new test client are by far my favorite features. Although I will say, performance is probably my favorite. Clearly, it's the fastest PHP framework available, and not just PHP framework and echoing Hello World, but in a full stack application where you use forms, use security, use database access, use web services. Like all of these components are what add up, and I think Symfony 2 will be the fastest framework available for PHP. It'll also be the most fully featured. So I think the combination is a win.
So yeah, I think that generally the PHP is importing many culture or new idea from other programming language or other programming way. So like the continuous integration, I think it's originally some product of Java programming. So do you have any other programming language experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I follow all the major, not all of the major frameworks, but I generally keep track of what's going on with Zen framework, with Symfony, Symfony 2 obviously, Ruby on Rails, Pylons and Django, as well as Lyft. And I follow the development communities on both of those. I'm better at some languages, like my Ruby is not very good compared to my Python, compared to my PHP. But I think having a well-rounded skill set, being able to look at other people's code, being able to read and understand why they do things a certain way, allows you to grow. Because you learn from other people's mistakes. I think that's the best thing you can do, is learn from somebody else's mistakes so you don't make it yourself. And the way you can do that in the engineering world is by following these timelines, by seeing what other open source communities do. How do they go about creating documentation? How do they go about creating features? And how do they create tools? Like, yes, so continuous integration in Jenkins is a product of the Java world, right? And I think that you take those best practices that you see in every industry. The Zen server for PHP provides a debug console, provides a way to manage exceptions, a way to manage logging. Being able to look at the web profiler and the debug tools in Symfony 2 that are available for free, you can see that we're offering those sort of enterprise tools that we find in the PHP world, that you find in the Java world, that you find in the Rails Ruby world. I think that that's where we learn from. So yeah, I think in order to be a good programmer, especially in the PHP world, you need to know other languages. You need to look and expand your horizons, to follow what other people do. I think that's key. I think that it's really crucial. The problem with PHP, and you may want to edit this out because it's slightly offensive, is that there's a very low barrier for entry. So for the longest time, you had lots of people that weren't really sure what was going on underneath, but were able to make stuff work. And in order to build real applications, you have to understand how everything works. Not just does it work, you have to understand why and how. And I think in the PHP world, there are more people that don't know why and how than in the Java and in the Python world. So I think that makes all the difference. That's why you should know other languages. That's why you should explore other tools, different development methodologies. And it doesn't mean one person is right. It's about taking the best ideas. That's why I respect Symfony the most, especially Symfony 2. It takes the best ideas, despite where they come from, whether it's Rails or Django or Java, and we build it into one community. If we can reuse it, we do reuse it. A good example is Zen Framework 2 in the logger. If the code is there and it's high quality and it's tested and documented, we will try to reuse it. If it's not, we'll add our own, but we'll make it open source and we'll encourage other frameworks or other projects to use that instead of creating their version. I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I think that since PHP 5.3, most of frameworks is going to same direction now, I think.
Precisely. The support for namespaces, late static binding, lambda functions, there are all these small features that allow you to do things much easier or much more efficiently or in less lines of code or with just a better design. And I think all of the frameworks will evolve with the tool set. Symfony 2 is an evolution of Symfony 1. It's an evolution of PHP. So you evolve with the tools that you use, right? PHPUnit wasn't as good 4 years ago, which is why we had Lime. Right? But now that it's evolved, we're evolving with it. PHP object support was useless in PHP 4, right? And you have all these frameworks for PHP 4. They added good object-oriented support in PHP 5, or alright object support in PHP 5, and you see a bunch of frameworks that leverage that. As the languages add more features that make it easier to write cleaner frameworks, you'll see them all evolve. So I think that is the right. I think you are right. Eventually, all of the frameworks will have namespaces support. Will require PHP 5.3. And I think this is the right idea. A lot of people complain if you break backwards compatibility, but you need to evolve with your toolset. I understand there is a need for long-term support, which is why we offer long-term support versions of Symfony for this specific case. But if you want to stay current, you have to use the current tools. And I think PHP has evolved a lot, especially in the last few years with Yahoo, with Facebook, with all these big companies starting to adopt it and invest in it and hire the core contributors to develop on it. The tool set grows, and so do the frameworks that build on those tools.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see more good future in PHP and Symfony community. So what do you expect for future of Symfony?
It's not so much the future of Symfony as much as it is for PHP. So one, I think clearly the docs that we have now will evolve, the features that we have now will stabilize and evolve. You'll start to see a lot of bundles. I think you'll start to see the idea of official bundles or certified bundles of some sort, and I think this will really add weight to the community, because the problem with Symfony 1 is these plugins, right? And there's all these plugins, but they're varying quality. I think it's very important for when the community grows that you help provide tools to moderate the community, to help the community. I think that is where the focus of Symfony 2 will be in the future, is helping developers contribute better with projects like Symfony 2, bundles.org, with the new maybe Symphonians.org, right? Something that unites the community, that makes it easy to post a job. So maybe it's not just the code. The code is fairly stable right now, but it's the tools around the code. It's the tools around the community. I think this is what you'll see evolve the most. As well as I would like to see on the server side that you have things like Pagoda Box and server groups, where you can essentially create a Git repository of my Symfony project, paste it in their interface, and Heroku for PHP. Everything is managed for you. You don't have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to worry about scaling up your database. You focus on writing your application. We focus on running it. I think there will be a lot of services that do this idea, and I think it'll make it easier for developers to just focus on the code. This is what I would like to see for PHP. The Rails World, Engineer, Heroku, they've done such a good job providing this. It's something that I see missing from the PHP community. And I think it would be the perfect complement to something that allows you to do rapid application development like Symfony does, to be able to do rapid deployments in a very easy way. Yes.
So thank you for everything for today, and
thanks for having me.
Hack Day. I really enjoyed everything.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure.